Do you ever wonder why we're here? Existentially, physically, politically? Me either. Sounds like a bunch of smart brain nerd stuff. I busy my mind instead with what nature intended, basic pattern recognition, which causes me to wonder about some things. Like, for instance, the Halo logo. Does it imitate the Islamic star and crescent on purpose, or is it simply a coincidence? Surely the Halo logo is intended to refer to the titular Halo ring, a ring world that doubles as a galaxy-destroying superweapon. If that's the case, why is it missing a section, and what is the dot in the middle supposed to be? There can be no doubt whatsoever that the Halo games borrow heavily from religion. The games are literally called Halo, a reference to artwork where golden rings can be seen on top of people's heads to represent a divine nature or a saintly status. Further, the games are set amidst a war between a coalition of aliens united by religion and humans who seem to be largely secular.
Just like the first two editions, it's a science fiction story based around a shoot-'em-up video game.
You're basically like a super soldier and you kill aliens, but I like playing the multiplayer where you just play other people and just try and kill each other.
The religion of the Alien Covenant is central to their motivations, and so is a pivotal element of the Halo games. This religion is treated as a mystery at first, but over time, the games and their tie-in media revealed more, that the religion of the Covenant is based initially on misinterpretations and eventually on intentional misrepresentations. They worship an ancient and extinct alien race that littered the galaxy with monuments and devices. One of the most revered of these devices is the Halo Array. I don't wish to bore anyone with an extensive detailing of the dense and convoluted greater Halo narrative, though know that these revered ancient aliens are known as the Forerunners, and they created this Halo Array to cleanse the galaxy of a parasitic life form known as the Flood. Once the Flood was defeated, they seeded the galaxy with life from a massive space habitat called the Ark. The Flood? The Ark? Like the Old Testament story of Noah? No, subtlety is not one of Halo's strengths. Anyway, the Forerunners desired to select humanity as the inheritors of their legacy. In essence, humanity was to be the chosen people. The Covenant hierarchs, however, believing the Halo Array to be the gateway from which to begin a so-called great journey to salvation, and only realizing after some time that the Forerunners they worshipped preferred humanity, began lying about the Forerunner legacy and sought to destroy humanity.
Hell, not again.
Emergency generators, now!
Shielding failed. They're down and charging.
As soon as they're up, re-establish contact with Lord Hood. Let him know.
All of you vermin, cowering in the dirt, thinking, what, I wonder, that you might escape the coming fire? No, your world will burn until its surface is but glass, and not even your demon will live to creep, blackened from its hold to mar the reflection of our passage, the culmination of our journey. For your destruction is the will of the gods, and I am their instrument.
So the games, especially the original trilogy, are about humanity defending itself from a genocidal holy crusade while attempting to stop the Zealous Covenant from activating the Halo Array and effectively destroying the galaxy. Also, the Flood comes back, because there needed to be a second enemy faction to provide a plot twist, raise the stakes, and allow for greater enemy variety. You understand.
I don't understand.
Have you ever played a Halo game before?
No.
Excellent. Now, tell me what this thing is.
I'll call them bug. They hide alone in the mountains to avoid humans, but if a human were to ever get close enough it would tear their eyes out. It twitches and creaks as it moves towards the player. They are the guardian of the quest MacGuffin and players know them for being annoying but not noteworthy.
Through this conflict between a secular humanity innocently defending itself and a fanatically genocidal alien death cult, we can determine that the message the Halo games are trying to send out into the world is that religion equals bad. The idea that the Halo games are concerned about the dangers of religious fanaticism is not a new or terribly exciting idea, so then why bring it up? Halo has a negative impression of religion. Big whoop. Well, I bring it up because I often wonder about the Halo logo. Does it imitate the Islamic Star and Crescent on purpose, or is it simply coincidental? There can be no doubt whatsoever that Halo borrows heavily from all sorts of media. It is a gleefully referential series at its most innocent and borders on plagiaristic at its least. There is a lengthy list of Halo's pop culture references on Halopedia. The titular Halo itself is inspired by a 1970s sci-fi novel called Ringworld. These flying insect aliens are technically called drones, but most often they are referred to as buggers, a reference to Ender's Game. However, the most notable references and polls come from aliens. Human soldiers are modeled after the colonial marines, enemy covenant designs take elements from xenomorphs, and of course, the parasitic flood is complete with its own version of a facehugger. Although, if you ask me, I get way more of a Starship Troopers vibe from Halo. Halo certainly has its moments where it tries to be a little bit spooky, but at its heart, it's a shooting game where the gameplay is either broken up by an action-packed cutscene or a melodramatic cutscene. Sometimes both. This is more in line with the tone of Starship Troopers than it is with Aliens. As far as setting is concerned, they both have a lot in common. While not fleshed out in the games so well, humanity in the Halo universe is a fascistic society similar to Starship Troopers. And Halo isn't blind to these similarities and makes references to Starship Troopers just as much as anything else. Halo's orbital drop shock troopers are a clear example of this. On top of this, there are a few Halo cutscenes that seem ripped straight out of the movie. To be quite honest, Halo is essentially just Starship Troopers, but without the satire.
Could we possibly make any more noise? I guess so.
I don't say all this to disparage Halo, except, okay, maybe I do a little bit, but it's my nostalgic video game that I adore, so I'm allowed to, okay? Great. These are all simply references and sources of inspiration. What Halo does with these borrowed elements is to make its own unique world with its own unique vision. And this is something that is common in storytelling and art. Think back on how halos are common in religious art, across many different works by many different artists over the course of centuries. And then think about how differently those images can be repurposed for different effects. A halo over the head of Jesus and a halo over the head of SpongeBob technically convey about the same idea of goodness, but one is serious and the other is playful. One is supposed to be in awe of Jesus, while one is supposed to laugh at SpongeBob. These references rely on a cultural familiarity for them to work. For us to laugh at the angelic SpongeBob, we need to have some understanding of Abrahamic conceptions of divinity. And when one makes these references or draws inspiration from these sources, one must be careful with the baggage these sources have accrued over the thousands of years of history. So, Halo. Is it careful with its references? Surely what damage could be done by uncritically riffing off of a story about a fascist society entering into pointless forever wars and mixing that together with Christian symbolism to tell the tale of a brutal and terrifying foreign force using their faith as justification for violence? Halo tries desperately to follow a rule of cool. When writing, it's clear that what they thought should happen in the story should only be whatever seemed like the coolest thing they could possibly do. This results in some strange cutscenes, like this one, where this military leader is asked where troops should go. She then walks away all dramatically and says,
To war.
Only for the cutscene to end, whereupon she walks back down to where she was, and then starts giving actual orders. It's silly. Following this rule of cool, it appears that Halo only borrows elements from pop culture and media that the writers think is cool. The colonial marines and aliens looked cool, so they based their marines off of them. The fact those colonial marines and aliens were insufferable assholes was not brought forward into Halo because that was deemed less cool.
Hey, Vasquez. Have you ever been mistaken for a man?
No. Have you?
Oh, Vasquez. He just too bad.
The buggers from Ender's Game were brought in because they seemed like a cool enemy that would add some verticality to the shooting gameplay. But what's not brought into Halo is their genocide by humanity worked up into a frenzy of fear. That was deemed significantly less cool. And finally, badass soldiers dropping from orbit to kill aliens was taken from Starship Troopers because it was cool looking. All the military fetishization and bravado and heroic music were brought in as well for much the same reason. What was not brought in was the satire. What was not brought in was how the movie uses camp to portray the absurdity of those elements. Halo instead wants those elements to be taken seriously. Calling military machismo absurd would take away from its cool factor. After all,
it's afraid. It's afraid!
by taking only the elements that they thought were cool, Halo separates those elements from their context, and so separates them from the point their original works were trying to make. Aliens shows a toxic culture in the military, Ender's Game shows how dehumanizing people leads to thoughtless slaughter, and Starship Troopers captures the absurdity of the idea of a glorious military. And by taking from those works without taking in the meaning of those works, Halo culminates in replicating the negative forces those works were pushing against. Halo portrays the military as essentially just a bunch of bros hanging out and having good times. Everyone is having fun in the Marines, right?
Oh yeah, baby!
Halo encourages the player to mercilessly wipe out levels on levels of enemy forces because they are the enemy. They are alien. Anything purple has got to be destroyed.
Exit this way.
And finally, Halo romanticizes the idea of war. Heroic music swells as the player achieves feats of daring and bravery. What could be better than fighting the good fight for the sake of all of humanity in the face of such a terrible enemy? The world of Halo is militarized and led by a fascist regime, yet the games never truly criticize this. All focus is paid to defeating the Covenant. The evil Covenant justifies the militarized fascist state. In Halo, all this authoritarianism is saving humanity. And by authoritarianism, I mean suppressing revolts in colonial states by kidnapping children, training them through childhood to be soldiers, forcibly implanting them with cybernetic and biological enhancements, and then giving the survivors a suit of armor. Instead of condemning, the game justifies all this because it gives humanity a means of waging war. Hey, we'll call the kids Spartans because Spartans were kind of similar and Spartans were cool. Let's not think too much about it, okay? Oh, and we'll show that this process worked by turning their eyes blue. Wonder what that's about. Is that a white supremacy? Nah, surely it's coincidence. And now you're telling me humanity is the chosen race, inheritors of a great legacy, and are destined to control the galaxy? Okay, all this stuff is starting to add up in a direction I'm not really vibing with, are you? It's starting to seem as though one of the messages Halo wishes to impart on its audience is that fascism is good, maybe? If so, how does that message interact with its primary point that religious fanaticism is bad? Alright, Val, you're up. What's this character about?
Wow, this is an interesting looking character. I will call them Slug. I'd say they're really kind inside, but years of being treated as an ugly has made their personality twist and become as ugly as they look. Nobody likes them now. They have a high sense for fashion, but feel oppressed because nobody wants to see them dress up. They info dump this on every new girlfriend, which causes them to leave. They were only there for his gem collection anyways. They have a slug lower body. They look after the Halo ring, and don't let anyone, never mind a human, talk shit about the Empire.
Have you, by chance, ever taken a good hard look at the Halo logo? Do you think it's intended to be reminiscent of an Islamic star and crescent? I mean, why would they want to allude to Islam? Islam isn't referenced in Halo, not that I've seen anyway. Could it be that... Nah, it couldn't. Could it? I'm curious if the time period and environment Halo was developed in, The time period of the early 2000s wherein the 9/11 attacks marked the beginning of a war on terror and a wave of Islamophobia influenced the narrative of Halo. I ponder whether or not, in their effort to portray religion as a deadly, malevolent force hellbent on the destruction of civilization, they base their depiction of a scary alien religion on their fears of the scary foreign religion of Islam. The first Halo game was released on November 15th, 2001 as a launch game for the original Xbox. This was a little over 9 weeks after the 9/11 attacks. Video game development is a long process, and the development of Halo was no exception. It is incredibly unlikely that Halo Combat Evolved was so influenced by the wake of 9/11. However, it is worth noting that Islamophobia was not a consequence of 9/11, and that it existed in our society for a long time. As it turns out, religion can be a key element in propaganda campaigns designed to inflame fears through paranoia and ignorance. If your enemy doesn't believe in your god, well, they may as well be demons. Killing them isn't so bad, and it might even be good. Islamophobia, then, is the tool by which Americans and Europeans can use to justify imperialism in majority Muslim regions. Portrayals of the religion as violent, oppressive, and hell-bent on world conquest give way to a desire to occupy and civilize. In fact, the first overseas intervention of American forces was in North Africa during the Barbary Wars in 1801. Americans killing Muslims is a pretty old tale. Older still are the Crusades. To say all this conflict hasn't had an impact on the culture and that this culture wouldn't influence Halo is a major stretch. Although, if I'm being honest, the influence of Islamophobia in Halo doesn't make a major presence until Halo 2. Released on November 9th, 2004, 3 years after the 9/11 attacks and the invasion of Afghanistan, and well over a year after the invasion of Iraq, Halo 2 could not help but be influenced by the major conflicts of its day. In Halo 2, the Covenant forces have finally pushed humanity all the way back to Earth. It is humanity's last stand. The Covenant blow past humanity's orbital defense grid and can begin their invasion anywhere they choose. They choose Mombasa, a Muslim-majority East African city. Fighting in the city ensues. It's an arid climate, buildings are made of a yellow stone. Aesthetically, it's typical of depictions of the Middle East as seen in films and other games. More accurately, and more true to the East African setting, I'm going to hazard a guess and suggest the fighting in Mombasa was to evoke scenes from Black Hawk Down, a popular 2001 American war movie set in Mogadishu, Somalia. Fighting in Mombasa consists of only 2 levels in the game, so admittedly this setting is not a whole lot to go off of, though please consider some of the game's cut content. Originally, the alien character called the Arbiter was to be called Dervish, Dervish being a term for Muslims who take vows of material poverty. They changed this, fearful of direct references to Islam causing controversy. Similarly, during a coup d'etat within the Covenant, there was supposed to be a beheading scene. Again, this was cut for fears of it being too controversial and being linked to real-world events. For some reason, though, suicide bombers were considered safe and were included in Halo games from Halo 3 onwards. Nevertheless, this cut content shows us that they did start to be mindful of the real-world implications of their game's themes. Showing this further, Halo 2 begins a process where some aliens begin to receive humanization. You actually end up playing as an alien for half the game. The game becomes sympathetic and wishes to show the perspective of those who have been indoctrinated in the faith of the Covenant, and once they break free from that indoctrination, are set about freeing their comrades as well.
The prophets use you like they use me. Reject their lies. Rebel, or all your hides will perish.
In other words, there are now good aliens who align themselves and fight alongside humanity against a shared enemy. From that point on, it's unclear what the beliefs the rebelling aliens have beyond destroying the Covenant. They go from being full of faith, and then their spirituality is ignored. They become like the humans who don't really mention any of their own religious beliefs, and so seem atheistic or at least secular. So the only way the aliens really become good is to not have any religion or spirituality. The idea that abandoning spirit is a key to progress or improvement is quite dismissive. Being an atheist or supporting secularism doesn't make one a better person in and of itself, nor does the adoption of either across society as a whole guarantee any sort of progress in and of itself. But I'm not entirely convinced that's exactly what's going on here anyway. If you recall, Halo loves itself some Christian imagery, going as far as to name its main character John 1:17, a potential reference to the book of John, chapter 1, verse 17. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. a verse that, according to this website, is intended to show the difference between the teachings of Moses and Jesus. That Moses taught the law, which told people of sin and what was wrong. Jesus, on the other hand, provides a path of redemption and fixing what was wrong. With that said, is it possible that the humans aren't secular or atheist at all? Is it possible that the rebelling aliens are only good because they redeemed themselves in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ? And so is the Human Covenant War a story of a Christian-Muslim conflict that can only be resolved through destruction or conversion? It is possible, but I also doubt it. Halo isn't subtle. Halo is an amalgamation of references put together like Legos to build a story. A particular story that required a level of nuance that may have been too ambitious for its writers.
I am truth, the voice of the Covenant. So, you must be silenced.
By taking in all of these references, Halo took in all of the baggage that goes with them. Without a truly critical eye, Halo was allowed to be swept away by forces of cultural hegemony. Humanity in Halo is supposed to be secular, but due to the references they make and the environment in which the game was produced, humanity seems to lean towards Christianity.
More importantly, it commemorates the man who gave the world faith, who gave humanity a future, who made mankind believe again. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117.
Barely getting you. What's your situation? Over?
Colonel, this is Noble One. There are no rebels. The Covenant are on Reach. Acknowledge?
Come again, Noble One. Did you say Covenant?
Affirmative. It's the winter contingency.
May God help us all.
The government in Halo is the United Nations. This hints that the UN of our world became more powerful and federal to facilitate space colonization. But due to Halo being an American game, made by Americans, largely for an American audience, it just looks and feels like a Space America. A Space America fighting a war against a religious group. And sure, in Halo, humanity is defending itself from genocide in a war against an extremely powerful and technologically advanced empire, whereas America fights wars against loose insurgent groups for resources and exploitation. But is the former not the propaganda it uses to justify doing so? The United States loves to portray itself as an underdog beset on all sides by enemies. What Halo does is continue the fantasy world that supports American imperialism. So then, what do you think of this?
I will call them Jeffrey. Their whole personality revolves around some normie interest like Marvel movies. They get angry when you insult their favorite series. They want to kill Halo Man because one time when he invaded a planet he landed his ship on one of their farms. They are an oppressed people. They exist to serve as easy cannon fodder for the plot, to make Halo Man seem like a righteous soldier for killing the ugly foreigners.
For the final time, I will ponder the Halo logo and its similarities to the star and crescent. No, I don't think they were intended to look similar. I do think it is coincidence. I think the dot in the middle is supposed to hint at the reveal that the Halo rings are weapons of galactic destruction. The part that's broken off of the Halo is likely intended to foreshadow the destruction of the Halo ring by the player at the end of Combat Evolved. More to my ultimate point though, I don't really think it matters if it was intended to or not. Is Halo Islamophobic? Maybe, yeah. Insofar as our society is geared towards Islamophobia as a tool for imperialist wars, sure. Is Halo fascist? Fuck yeah it is. Disturbingly so. Just as fascist as the world we live in today. Perhaps the more terrifying thing about it all is how accidental it all seems. Sure, in this video I've arranged information in a more focused way to support arguments, but this isn't how you experience playing the game. All of these elements are doled out over the runtime of several first-person shooters that each take anywhere between 8 and 12 hours to complete. Halo may not be subtle, but cultural hegemony is. The dominant culture in America is white supremacy tinged with Christian fundamentalism, and it can seep into everything we do and make. We might not be able to help it most of the time. This is what we've grown up in. This is largely the perspective from which we will view the world, unless of course one realizes this and pays a special mind to critically think things through. And even then, you're likely to have some blind spots. Halo reveals a cycle of propaganda, that the greater culture around us influences the art created within it. When we create art, that art takes its influences further and adds to the background noise of our society. Background noise that goes on to influence future works, on and on. I believe Halo is intended to be interpreted as I interpreted it towards the beginning of the video, as harsh criticism of religious fundamentalism that clouds judgments and leads down dark paths. A criticism that could ring true for Christianity as well as Islam. But, being the game it is, made by the people it was made by, for the audience it was made for, it ends up with material from pop culture and familiar religious concepts. These then go on to influence Halo so that it reinforces a view of only the wrong type of religious fanaticism being bad. A mistake that ends up making Halo a bitter irony, that in its efforts to criticize religious fanaticism, it actually reinforces it. I guess, ultimately, Halo can be seen as an example that it doesn't matter what you intend, it matters more what you do. Halo isn't supposed to be about fascists who use fear of an all-powerful foreign religious crusade in order to wage war, but it is. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. It was a lot of hard work to make, but also a lot of fun. Please consider supporting me and the work I do through likes, comments, shares, subscriptions, and maybe even through Patreon. Speaking of which, I'd like to say thank you to my Patreon backers, Ericobia, Josh Thomas, and Paz. I'd also like to thank Valium for providing her delightfully informative intermissions. Be sure to check out her YouTube channel.
I do a politics videos.
That's right. Other creators I'd recommend for you to watch include the likes of One Dime and their video on how Call of Duty desensitizes us to war, Question Refuge's video on how the US military targets kids and lies about it, and also please consider checking out Jake Nichols' video concerning Rich People Facebook, Cultural Hegemony, Praxis, and Antonio Gramsci's Prison Notebooks. You can find links to everyone in the description below, but before you go, please remember that he is always with you.